I'm going to talk about this presentation for a second, and then I will go off presentation style and talk about some current issues, and then open it up for any other things that you'd like to talk about. And for some of you, this may be a little old, but I still think it's relevant. When we were here a year ago, it was over a year ago, we talked about connecting the dots, which was a plan we had put together in 2021. And that plan, to a large extent, has been fairly well integrated into the economic development strategic plan. So I was just introducing it when I talked to you guys last year. It had not been approved yet, but on April the 5th, it was approved by the county council and has been implemented moving forward together. This is also on our website. It's about a 150-page document. I encourage you, if you have not seen it or read it, to look at it at your leisure, because in addition to the recommendations I'm going to cover today, there's an appendix in there that has all kinds of reports that give you more detail on, let's say, housing or transportation, or things like Thrive 2050. So it's an excellent resource. And I'll also come back to our website in a second, because all of this is there. So I'm going to skip this slide and really get into what the strategic priorities are for the county. And a lot of it relates to what's going on today, with the exception of what's happened with inflation and interest rates, and how that's created a little bit of a curveball for a lot of our budgets and the economy. But these things still stick in terms of accelerating innovation, economic drivers, and entrepreneurship here. A huge focus on workforce and educational opportunities, and we can talk about whether that's working or not. Building livable communities that connect residents to jobs. You're probably going to say, what about affordable communities? That's a big challenge, not just for Montgomery County, but also for the region. And then creating an inclusive economy for shared prosperity. And some of these are my editorial comments. Everybody, if you look at the numbers, we are one of the top 10 wealthiest countries in the wealthiest counties, in the country, by household income, GDP, oh God, you name it. We look great. We've got 11 billionaires who live in the state. 6 of them are in Montgomery County, and it all sounds good. So why do we need help? Well, as you know, we're really like a reverse bell curve county. We have the haves and we have the have-nots. So one size does not fit all. You got a lot of well-to-do people, high-income wage earners, and you have a lot of people who are at or below the poverty line. And then the middle is shrinking. So in order to sort of even that out, this county has some incredible challenges, including year 21 jurisdictions. Sometimes I forget that I'm in the city of Rockville. That's where our office is. For some reason, I think I said this last year, there were 5 or 6 Chevy Chases. I live in Chevy Chase, but not one of the municipalities. So there are some really big challenges that we have to address systemically as we look forward to the future. These are some industries that we think are important and are unique to Montgomery County, and that's why you hear so much about them. It doesn't mean that other industries aren't, but if you want to sort of like rev up the economy and jumpstart some things, these are some areas that require a little bit more attention. Life sciences is our sweet spot, so is advanced technology. And then quantum computing is for the future. It is here today, but it's not what I would call a thriving industry at this point. Nobody makes money there. And then, of course, cybersecurity has always been important to us, as it has been to Howard County, to parts of Northern Virginia, but it's also very important to us. I'm going to skip this. So these were some of the recommendations from the Economic Development Strategic Plan, and the plan is good for 4 years. We have an opportunity to update it on July 1st. We will probably do a few tweaks, but no major changes in direction. And you can see what some of the recommendations are for life sciences. There is a strong infrastructure that is continuing to be built here in terms of developments, many of which are in Rockville and Gaithersburg. And we're increasing wet lab space, research space. That is happening. As a side note, if you're wondering, well, what is the impact of the economy been on what's happening? A lot of those developments have slowed down, or future build outs are not going to take place as planned for several years because the capacity is now there. So you have a better supply and demand equation. I'll jump to the next to last recommendation, simplifying the development process to meet the needs of growing life sciences companies. That is being done. We did a zoning text amendment. You'll see us do more of those going forward to sort of fast track the process for new life sciences companies or ones who are trying to expand. Another area of focus is advanced technology. We are the hospitality capital of the world. And in fact, about 5 weeks ago, we announced the launch of a hospitality incubator or accelerator. So that is happening, and it is focused on climate change. We will meet in a couple of weeks, but we see that continuing year in and year out, that we will have something special with an accelerator or incubator that focuses on the hospitality industry, and the topics may change. But for now, it's climate change. Quantum computing is huge. Many of you may have attended, or some of your friends may have attended the Quantum Investment Conference that was held at the University of Maryland earlier this week. We belong to a group called QEDC, Quantum Economic Development Consortium, and it's comprised of public sector and private sector organizations across the country to sort of facilitate the advancement of quantum. There are not a lot of companies that have incorporated, although there were about 3,000 startups across the world since the beginning of the year that have registered as quantum startups. So this is the industry of the future. Cybersecurity is always important and will continue to be. By the way, as I'm going through this, if you have a quick question or want any type of clarification, don't hesitate to stop me. Just go off of mute, because I won't see everybody raising their hand. Just stop me and say, Bill, can you stop for a second? This, I've talked about quantum computing, and you will see this in the headlines every day. By the way, quantum computing is very different from artificial intelligence. And AI was not in this report when we did it, but as we updated, AI is something that will be very important for all of our futures. You saw the county executive announce earlier this year the establishment of a health computing center in North Bethesda, which takes healthcare, life sciences, and the medical industry and marries it with AI. So we will definitely have our own presence here in Montgomery County. Now, AI is very controversial. I'm sure all of you have thoughts about it. We get asked a lot, is AI going to be, is it going to kill companies? Is it going to put people out of jobs? And I think that is to be determined. All that I've read suggests that it has less of an impact on industries, in that I think it will make them more efficient. But robots did not kill jobs in the auto industry. The creation of new fuels has not killed, well, coal is still around, but there are lots of technological improvements that happen, and it does not completely kill industries. And I don't think that AI will do that either. I think it will allow businesses to be more efficient, but I don't look at it as something that we should fear, other than how it impacts us as a society. I'm more concerned about what people can do. As an example, if with AI, you can write your college applications and get into, everybody can get into Harvard Business School now, then what's going to happen? A whole bunch of dummies show up because they really didn't have the capabilities, but their applications looked great. So somebody suggested, then we'll just get rid of the application process and look at it very differently. So I think you can work around that, but this is going to be an important part of our future. And I think it's an opportunity for our society from an economic development point of view to be that much more efficient. Cybersecurity continues to be important. We have strong relationships with the NCCOE and also NIST. We work with them. We have a PIA, a partnership intermediary agreement, to allow us to sort of help work that industry and to make sure that there are more companies here that are part of that, basically are in the cybersecurity space. And we do have a lot of competition. Going to the entrepreneurial ecosystem, I'm going to go to a couple of recommendations here. Montgomery County has a business incubator network. In fact, one of the incubators is right there in Rockville. One is in Germantown, one is in Silver Spring. And we've rewritten the strategy for those incubators, working with the county. We have rewritten the legislation for SBIR and STTR grants, which bring research and startup money together. And the changes were designed to allow more companies to apply for those grants. And then federal technology licensing and commercialization is something that we've always tried to unleash, whether it be on the technology side or the life sciences side, but this will continue to be something that we think is an opportunity, especially here in this region. I am going to skip this slide and go into some of the recommendations around workforce development. And these are 8 or 10 recommendations that have been suggested. This stuff is harder to do than you may realize. I mean, I'm sure you talk to your constituents all the time where businesses say, I don't have the talent I need. There's a talent pipeline shortfall. It doesn't matter what industry I'm in. This is actually a huge problem for us. But one of the themes that we really should work on and have not taken action on is legislation that would incentivize employers to retain jobs here, and also to workers to stay here in the county. So that's something that is moving slowly, but I think is very opportunistic, and we need it because there is competition in adjacent jurisdictions, whether it be in Frederick County or clearly in Northern Virginia. So we've really got to do something to at least hold on to the worker base that we have. And even if we do that, we still have a shortage. I think that what we're doing with the educational ecosystem here, with the University of Maryland, with the Montgomery College, and obviously with USG, to sort of have a more integrated approach to how we look at educational opportunities and who has access, is something that is also going to be really important for us. But not just the ecosystem that's here, I think it's the ecosystem in the region, because we are fortunate enough to have quite a strong educational system in terms of higher education in particular across the region. So we shouldn't just look at our borders. To support that even early on, we had recommended an early care and education initiative. That has happened. We now have an entity that has been formed. They have a board of directors. They're getting started. They're looking for funding, and we think that's important. You got to start early. You can't just wait until kids are in junior high school or high school. It's too late. We really need to look at kids between the ages of 2 and 5. And so this is actually happening as we speak. There's a lot happening with workforce. We work very closely with WorkSource Montgomery, but you can see there are 4 or 5 recommendations here. I won't go into those. You can read them at your leisure, because I do want to get through the other 2 priorities and then have time for some of the open-ended discussion about what's hot today. Now, how do we build livable communities that connect residents to jobs? And I think the easiest way that I look at it, and you guys would be more the experts than I am, but if you look at transit-oriented development, you look across the county and you look at where the work centers are and where they're going to be, whether it be in downtown Rockville, whether it be in Gaithersburg, whether it be in Silver Spring, whether it be in Wheaton, and I could name a couple of other places. We've really got to make sure that people can live where they choose to live, but that they can get to where the jobs are. And that's really important in terms of the housing that we provide to support residents of Montgomery County, but also at the same time to make sure that the transportation options are there. I'm going to skip this. So you see there are a number of recommendations here. I think the most important thing is to get more houses built. That's it, affordable housing. And I'm going to say housing that is affordable as opposed to affordable housing. We're not just talking about people who are at thresholds below the medium income, household income level for Montgomery County, but also for the great middle. You know, if the average house is selling for $550,000 in Montgomery County, you start thinking about how much do I really have to earn, or how much equity do I need to pay that mortgage? And we all probably say this, I couldn't afford to buy my house today. And that's why we're not going to move, because we're not going to move up. And it is a major problem for the region. I don't think that Montgomery County has any bigger a problem than Fairfax County has, or Arlington, Alexandria. This is a region-wide problem in terms of the housing shortage. And in terms of creative solutions to address this, you hear a lot about trying to convert office workspace into housing. Well, the bottom line is it works sometimes, but most of the time it doesn't. And it's not just because of zoning, it's where is the office space? Is that where people want to live? What is the cost of converting office space? What are the zoning issues? And zoning can be dealt with, but it's not as simple as you may think. Are there windows in the building? How are the buildings outfitted, and how do you retrofit them? That is not as easy to do as people want to believe that it is. I'll talk about transportation for a second. For me, it's about a couple of things that you see on here. You know, the county executive is a big proponent of bus rapid transit. Now, this is where I will be careful what I say. The first line is open on Route 29. There's one that's supposed to come down Veers Mill Road, 355, and others. And a fair amount of money is being invested in that. But we also need to get the purple line going. The problem is we're now looking at 2027 before the first station opens. And if you followed that at all, you know that the stations in Montgomery County will be the last ones to open. So take a guess as to when you think that's going to happen. But our transportation network is important. I think we're doing a good job in terms of expanding EV capacity in the county. That is happening. You see it all the time. There are big plans in the budget to expand that fairly dramatically, the county's budget in FY24. Now, I will talk about community wealth building. And this is something, and I started out my opening remarks really tried to address the fact that this is very complicated. You know, there are 1 million people here. 20% of them are really close to the poverty line, 20% or more, which no one would ever guess in one of the wealthiest counties in the country. So we have to do a lot of thinking about this. And the question is, to what degree can the public sector really push to make a real change here? In terms of reaching underserved communities, there is a lot that can be done. You can provide access to capital, and that is happening, both at the federal level, the state level, and even the county level. But it's not just providing the access, it's also the tools that people need to get capital, like developing business plans, like paying their taxes on time so that their FICO scores don't drop. Some of it is pretty simple and low-hanging fruit. But you've also got to educate a much larger group of businesses about what they can do to help themselves. And at the same time, we are working with financial institutions. MCEDC itself has started, we are a fund agent for the VLT program, which already existed in the state, providing loans to underserved communities. We put together a network of financial institutions who are trying to expand their reach to businesses who otherwise may or may not qualify under traditional terms. We're working very closely with the SBA, and the list goes on. So it's capital, it's training. It's also networking, in that a lot of people don't realize that there is more out there in terms of associations they should be involved with, trade organizations, professional organizations. And so we're trying to facilitate that at the same time, and that is happening. But basically, to support underserved communities, there is something called, in the African American community, the Black Collective, and they have a grant that's supported by the Maryland Black Chamber of Commerce to, it's about an $800,000 grant to provide training, to provide networking opportunities, to bring professionals in with management expertise, and so forth and so on. So there are things that are happening there. So that's a quick and dirty overview of those sets of recommendations. It is happening. The plan is moving forward. We want to be of one voice, and that's why you see Montgomery County and MCEDC logos working together. We put this together on behalf of the county. Just as a reminder, we are a public-private partnership. We like to say we're independent of Montgomery County, but we are dependent on them for money. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and would love to talk about topics that may be more contemporary. I know you have a lot of questions about, well, this is good, we're moving forward, but what is happening? What are we doing about the increased interest rates, and how that's having an impact on businesses? What about inflation? What does this mean to county businesses? And that is a challenge for all of us, both in all of your jurisdictions. And I don't know that I have a good answer that would be any different from what's happening across the country, except to say that unemployment continues to drop, which is a good thing. We're down at least the last figures we have are in January, and we watched the trend. We were down to 2.4%. That means that the basic economy is still strong. You see the national job growth numbers. So in spite of the fact that we have inflation, people are working and they have jobs, which means they are in a better position to pay bills. But there is that stretch, especially when you look at gas prices, food costs, and so forth, staples. In terms of the economists that I have met with, they say we will have perhaps a soft recession, and it's going to go up and down throughout the year. But by the time we get through the end of the year, the economy should be in pretty good shape. Let me stop there and let's talk about what's on your mind. Oh, Bridget, you had a question. Why will Montgomery County be the last ones to open?
Yes, thank you.
Are you talking about bringing workers back to work? I mean, bringing workers.
No, I was referring to your comment about the BRT.
Oh,
and
yes.
And the stops.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to send something while you were talking. Sometimes I
forget.
No,
that's why I looked at the chat at the very end.
Yeah. So one of the things that, I've heard from the community along Veers Mill Road is, this is going to be a sea change. And I think what people are thinking about is, if BRT comes, does that turn the property type from single family, people who bought into the American dream and are there and flourishing, and now they're going to be pushed to sell to multifamily? And then if they sell for what seems like a great price, where will they go? And that's one of the concerns that I'm hearing from a lot of our community along that corridor, is what does this really mean for us? So that's kind of where that was coming.
Got it. I can't speak to that particular line because I haven't focused on it. My gut reaction is that I don't think it's going to make a big difference, and I'll tell you why. And this is where I ask you not to repeat my comments to the county executive, even though this is being recorded. I think the BRT is important. I think the ridership levels and getting people to convert over to doing something differently than they did in the past is a bigger challenge than would have been anticipated 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And part of that, by the way, is tied to COVID. That if you look at the metro ridership levels, they are so far down. People are using cars left and right at every income level. So I don't know that that's really going to cause people to sort of put 2 and 2 together and say, now that I've got this BRT line, my house is that much more valuable. I thought you were looking at the zoning laws that we continue to look at, whether it be in Tacoma Park or Silver Spring, where you have higher density, and whether that's going to cause a problem in terms of people choosing to sell their houses or to developers who will then take advantage of the opportunity to create more density.
And what you just said is exactly what I'm talking about. And it's the converse of what the community is concerned about is at what point do they lose out because, you know, they've sold for what they feel is a high price, but where do they go? Right? Because it's all relative with the prices. And as you mentioned, you know, the median price is 500,000. So that I was just trying to get a handle on what your thoughts were when you said you thought that the stops in Montgomery County would be among the last. That's where I was going with that.
Oh, the purple line stops. Yes. So that very specifically is for the purple line, not for the BRT. I'm sorry, I wasn't clear on that. So the purple line, as you know, has been, it should have opened in 2023, then 2024, then 2025, now 2027. And it's the purple line stops in Montgomery County of the, I think it's 14 stops. All but one of them will be the last ones. They'll start almost in the middle and towards Landover. So that's what I'm referring to, not the BRT. But the BRT is behind schedule. Money has been put into the CIP to push that forward, but for reasons that I am not familiar with, they are definitely behind on that. And the Department of Transportation brought it up a couple of weeks ago, but I don't have the details.
Thank you. Thanks much.
Hey, Bill.
Yes.
Look at some questions that came in a little earlier. And this is Ed Reed from Poolsville. And one of those questions is about resources and what resources can we share to support businesses within our communities?
So I'm going to go to two. We will put in the chat 2 websites that have a zillion resources. One of them is ours, thinkmoco.com. And if you go there, it has a resource database. It has everything from financial plans. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And to me, it's one-stop shopping. Yeah, you can go to your Chamber of Commerce, but if at thinkmoco.com, it is just filled with business resources, opportunities, including how to start your business. If you're minority owned, women owned, we have special resources there. If you're interested in finance, if you're interested in permitting, if you're interested in how to relocate your business, there is more there in that one website than you can ever imagine. We've spent a lot of time looking across the county at the federal and state levels in terms of just about anything a business could need. And the companion to that is the brand new website, the Montgomery County Business Center, which is really Montgomery County Government, marylandgovernment.com/business. And we also complement each other. So you'll see a lot of cross references, but I would just go there and 90% of the work is done. There are a tremendous list of resources that are available depending on what your needs are. Let me see if I can I'll look at some additional examples. Tax incentives. We reference chambers of commerce, shared office space, helping with site selection. The list just goes on and on and on. So that's the simple answer, that it's not rocket science. We've done that work for you, homework for you. And there are other sources of information, but I wouldn't waste a lot of time. I would just go there.
It sounds like a great reference. Good resource for us to share with people in our communities. And another question, Bill, is it's several of our jurisdictions have commercial office space, which as you know, they're having a tough time.
Yep.
And that could be some of the retail space, some of the office space. And that is when we look at people in terms of businesses with post-COVID, what is going on at the county level to rethink commercial office space?
Well, other than tax incentives, the county cannot really do a whole lot to impact that. That's my impression, or my opinion, I should say. Um, Except for reducing tax rates or adjusting them or providing certain types of incentives. That is a very difficult thing, I think, for the county to attack. Again, it's a region-wide issue. Our vacancy rate is a little bit higher than it should be. It's like at 15.6%. The downtown Washington, the overall vacancy rate is closer to 12%, but for downtown, it's at 25%. And we're talking about commercial office space. So I don't know that there's a lot that the county can do other than looking at its taxes. And if you look at the pressure that is on the county government now going forward, you're not seeing people talking about tax reductions. They're talking about tax increases. Andy, you had a comment or a question?
Yeah, I would disagree with you. I think that the planning board could be doing some imaginative things, as was done in the 80s, for adaptive reuse of buildings. And, you know, I know everybody says, oh, we have all these empty office buildings, we should turn them into housing. That is not very practical in
Right.
most instances, just because of the design of a core of a commercial office space. But there are other things that might be used or might be done, that zoning changes and incentives in terms of perhaps a contest to, you know, what could be done with this building that the county fostered that might create a nexus with your life sciences initiatives and others. But I really think the county should be looking at adaptive reuse and looking at imaginative solutions, because there was a whole movement in the 80s to do that. And then when the economy got better, I mean, the old post office is one of the best examples of adaptive reuse from that period. And I'm not trumpeting Trump, but that choice of taking a rundown old post office that was sort of a tourist trap and not very well functioning and turning it into something completely different, it might have something. There might be some opportunities in the hotel industry or cybersecurity. Just seems to me that the county should be exploring these things. That's not something we as individual municipalities can do, but it's certainly something that would tie in with what you're doing. And the planning board could use, you know, its staff to explore creative solutions around the country and try and come up with a MoCo solution.
That is duly noted. I will say that in terms of county-owned property and land, that there are active discussions about what we can do in terms of, to your point, adaptive reuse. But in terms of the excess commercial space, it's not something that came to mind right away that I thought they could do. So we'll go back and look at what was done then, or what planning has been thinking about recently, because they are constantly doing research studies, and I do work closely with them. So thank you for the suggestion. We'll go back and take a look at
Does anyone else have a question for Bill? Bill, just got one more question that was sent in. And I know you touched on it a little earlier, but if you could go a little deeper into it, what is the county doing to attract new businesses?
Oh, sure.
And not just the large business, but even some of the mid-sized to small businesses.
Sure. Well, first of all, our best returns are on retaining businesses and helping the ones that are here expand, because the investments have already been made. The communities are here. We see more jobs come in when companies expand. So it's important that we have maintained that as a strong database. And there's also a lot of competition. Going back to the office space issue as an example, here's what's happening. Your lease is expiring. You're in pretty decent Class A space, but there are a zillion new buildings in downtown Washington that are empty. So why not just move to something that's even nicer, super comfortable, and at potentially reduced lease rates. And so you are seeing companies actively doing that. And I'm talking about DC in particular, because that's where you will see a fair amount of movement. They are desperate to fill those buildings. And there's this domino effect that some of those buildings are being filled, but then it means the ones that are being vacated are not easy. It's not easy to fill those. So that is my bigger concern. Before we even talk about attraction, we really need to stay on top of retaining the companies that are here, number one. In terms of attraction, there are two things. We are increasing our marketing efforts across the board to be more consistent on an ongoing basis. And we are testing marketing activities in some key markets, such as Boston, the Northeast Corridor. We will be looking at the Research Triangle in North Carolina, and some of these are life sciences and technology related. We have added business development specialists to our staff. We are working more closely with the state, and in particular, we have just started developing a more robust international strategy, because it makes sense, especially, and I can go through some of the countries, some in Europe, Israel, India, South America, especially. There are 3 or 4 countries there that we should not be ignoring. So we are putting more money and effort into that and working more closely with the state to do that. In terms of economic incentives, that is normally not a problem. That if there's a company that's interested, we've never had a problem at the state. It starts with the state and then trickles down to Montgomery County to provide an incentive package that is going to be attractive for a company to come here. We're increasing our presence at major trade shows. For instance, there are 4 that are coming up fairly soon, or 3. Select USA, which is tied to international trade, that's coming up in, I think, 2 weeks. There's ICSC, International Consortium of Shopping Centers. I've pretty much got that right, which is a major developer conference, and it is really important in terms of business attraction. Then there's Bio in Boston in June, which is the largest life sciences conference in the world. And those are huge opportunities from an attraction point of view. So we not only have staff there, we market at those conferences. We are constantly looking at whether or not there are additional incentives that we can provide or legislation. But I think we've definitely improved our game, and we're post-COVID. You know, for a while we were not traveling. I'm trying to think if I'm leaving anything out. There's something else that we are carefully doing. We are marketing the DMV and working with partners here, because part of the attraction challenge is to get people to think about being in the greater Washington area. Then it's our job to get them to come to Montgomery County. And there are 17 or 18 Montgomery counties in the country. So what makes us so special? It's because we are next to the nation's capital. We are part of a strong DMV. So when it makes sense, we partner with other jurisdictions for overall attraction efforts. And then it's our job to differentiate between why here versus Prince George's County or Montgomery County. See, Tracy, you have your question in hand or hand up?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Do you know when the Montgomery Mall project is going to get started? They're adding housing there. And I mean, that's a pretty ambitious project, using a mall with kind of like what they did in Tyson's Corners, where a lot of people are living next to the mall.
I don't know when that's going to start, but I can check and find out, because I know the answer.
I mean, that's an economic development type of thing going on there in that area.
Let me back up for a second. You're talking about the housing, the addition to the mall. It should be starting any minute. But okay. I can get it.
Well, it doesn't matter. Is it going to start this year? I mean, I hear all the time, next week. So, but you expect it to start this year for sure.
I expect it to start this year, but not for sure.
I completely understand.
Yeah, it is coming along, as I understand it. The thing that has halted or slowed down a lot of projects, which I am hoping is more short-term, does have to do with interest rates and financing and capital availability. So that is slowing down a lot of projects, but I would say that that is more temporary than long-term.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think it's an exciting project. I mean, it definitely reminds me of what they're doing in
Yeah,
Northern
there are many
Virginia.
components to it, and the reason I'm drawing a blank because I swear that there's been some activity that's already started. The major work has not, but I will have to check on that because that's where I said this is something that is like current,
Right. Okay. Thank
but I
you.
will check.
All right, thanks, Bill. Is there anyone else? Any other questions, thoughts for Bill before?
I just had one quick question. You mentioned several incubators.
Mhm.
How many,
Yes.
how many people or companies do we have in those incubators?
I'd have to ask the county. We have a report. It varies by site. The one in Germantown, the Germantown Innovation Center, is completely full. I would rather not say because I would need to check with them, even though we work
Okay.
closely, unless we're doing an annual report. I will say this. I do know that there's plenty of space at both. Well, there's plenty of space in Silver Spring for sure. And I just don't remember the vacancy rate, but I've been there recently and trust me, there's space. In Rockville, I want to say that it's 50% occupied, but I would have to check. I really don't keep track of that, except when we're doing an update. So I'll be happy to find out.
Thank you.
So this is just a general question. What do you see in other counties? What are they doing that you would like Montgomery County to be doing?
You mean, what are they doing that we're not doing?
Right.
I think that they are doing a lot of the things. In fact, they're in some cases, they're being more aggressive, and you may agree or disagree. I don't know if you've been following the legislation in Arlington and Alexandria about dense housing. And that was very controversial, but I think it was the right thing to do. And I think we need to do, we've been pretty lax here, but I think we need to do even more. And I think, you know, the idea that everybody's going to have a 1 acre house, those days are gone. We need housing and times have changed. So in that sense, I think we should be more aggressive. Now that's on the housing side. The other jurisdictions, some of them are introducing startup funds for new businesses. And that's something that I think we should take a look at. Venture capital funds. That's not something that we have done. And I think that is an opportunity for us. Fairfax County just launched one. And we want to talk to both the state and to the county about that. Now we do have TEDCO, but that's a little bit different. TEDCO is a statewide consortium, but that's an opportunity. Let's see. A simplified permitting process. And some of you are very good at it. I mean, because you have control, total control. You know, this is a big county. We are trying to streamline the permitting process. We just had that. There's a new DPS. Well, Bridget's going to be mad at me because our new head of DPS came from Rockville, and he did a great job there. But we had him as a guest at our board meeting this week to really talk about how that's got to make a difference in terms of our ability to retain businesses and attract them. Let's see. Each jurisdiction is very different. Frederick County can do a lot of things simply because the cost of land is just so much lower, significantly lower.
Right.
Prince George's County can do a lot for the same reasons. Northern Virginia, I will say this, I think we need to work more closely with the state and get the state, our state, Maryland, to commit more money to things as simple as travel and tourism. We do about 1/10 of what Northern Virginia does. No, that's not fair. We do about 30% of what Northern Virginia does. And I do think that the state needs to invest more in overall economic development than it has in the past. I feel that we have a good commerce department, by the way, at the state level. But I think in general, in terms of the attention that they get and what's needed to make a thriving state, and I have made it a point, having met with the Secretary of Commerce on multiple occasions and in our meetings with the governor, to make sure that Montgomery County is not taken for granted, and that just because we're big and have resources doesn't mean we don't need more. So in Northern Virginia, they are much more coalesced as a region, working closely with the state. In the district, I would say it's all about the types of incentive plans we have for businesses to grow. That would be the biggest change or opportunity.
So we've got a lot to do yet then, right?
Yes, but the glass, don't forget that the glass is half full. We have more going for us than just about any place else in the country, in spite of the challenges that I talked about earlier. So don't feel frustrated. It is challenging. We've just got to sort of make sure that we are more of one focus and one mind. And that is a Montgomery County challenge, that everybody wants to run off and do their own thing. And we definitely need to do a better job of prioritizing the 2, 3, or 4 things that are going to make a difference, especially when it comes to economic development. I'll just answer this question. Oh, simplifying the permitting process. Well, how many hours do you have? Here's the biggest challenge in our permitting process, and a lot of improvements have been made. One, it used to be very linear. Now you can go through a parallel process in terms of looking at an entire plan and getting a lot of your permitting approved at multiple stages simultaneously. That's number 1. 2 is consistency of standards. 3 is having more flexibility to make sure that those who are approving the permits or looking at what you're doing, that you're interpreting the laws the same way, and that you're taking a more comprehensive look at what a particular business needs, again, in the beginning, and not making changes. We tend to change the rules along the way, especially for bigger projects. So we've got to have more predictability. And we need, again, more feet on the street, that there are really not enough people in permitting. If somebody goes on vacation, this is an extreme example, and this just happened. Actually, it's happened multiple times. Somebody has a case, your restaurant is ready to open. The inspector goes on vacation. It's the last 3 days before you're opening, and nobody will come back out to give you that final certification. So they are instituting a process where nothing sits on one person's desk, where it's shared. They had to scrap a new computer system that they thought was going to streamline and put everything online. So they're going to establish a new one. Those are examples of streamlining the permitting process.
Are you speaking only of DPS, or are you also speaking of the Department of Health? Because the Department of Health, as it relates to food trucks and small businesses that are restaurants, of which we are rich in restaurants, I have heard countless complaints about getting approvals in a timely manner from the health department.
I was referring to DPS and not to health, but I'm glad you mentioned that. And you are right. We have more restaurants per capita than almost anywhere in the country, believe it or not.
And those are small businesses, and a lot of them suffer mightily because the health department is very short-staffed.
Okay.
And sometimes the rules do change.
Yep. Well, thanks for reminding me to include them when I talk about permitting, because historically I don't. I talk about planning and I talk about DPS, but tend to overlook the health department. Well, I'll tell you what, some of you I know, but you do not hesitate to reach out to me one-on-one, Bill@thinkmoco.com. I'm fairly accessible. And if you want me to spend time in your individual jurisdiction to get to better know it, or to think things through in terms of what may be more helpful, either myself or staff will be happy to come out and work individually, with the exception of Rockville, because we already do it. We are partners. I sit on the Ready Board. We spent a lot of time working with the city of Rockville and the city of Gaithersburg in particular. But for other jurisdictions, don't hesitate to bring us out to brainstorm, or if you got a particular problem or issue, we are here for you. I don't look at I look at it as one Montgomery County.
All right, well, there's no other questions. Let's thank Bill for his time. Bill, thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you all and good luck to us all.